Grief doesn't come with instructions. There is no map, no timeline, no easy way forward, but every day, people find the strength to keep going, to rebuild their lives, and to carry the memories of the ones they love. This is Strength After Sorrow.
Welcome back to Strength After Sorrow. I am Jeff Sandman, and today is an episode that I think I've been trying to put off for a while. I've actually been pacing around the house and not wanting to come in here to actually do this. This is going to be about the day that it all changed for me. There's moments in life that split everything into two parts, a before and an after, and this is mine. I've shared little pieces of my story before, talked about some grief, talked about some strength. These are some things I'm going to continue to talk about, and what it looks like to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. I've never walked through this day like I'm going to. I told myself that I'm going to tell my story. If I'm going to put this podcast out, then I want those that have gone through something traumatic, I want them to not feel like they're the only ones. I mean, it's one thing for me to just kind of share my story of what I've gone through, the days after and things like that. But what about that day? What about the day that everything happened? For me, it was the day that our son died. And this isn't, I was discussing with my wife today that I don't think I've ever actually really talked about that day. I know I've reflected on that day a little bit by myself, but I've never really sat down with anybody, even at any of the grief type classes that I went to. I never really shared anything about that day. So this could be a little bit of a heavy episode for me, but we're going to get through it, and I'm hoping that it's going to touch somebody and help them realize that they are not alone. A couple things. Again, like I've said, it was back in 2019, so that was going on 7 years ago. It was August 8th of 2019. It's hard to believe that it is going on 7 years. My wife listened to the last episode and she couldn't believe that it's been almost 7 years as well. For us back then, what was a normal day for us was, our son was living with us. He was back with us. And he had a bedroom downstairs, and there was days, he would get up and he would do great. He'd get up, he'd go to work and do his thing. And then there was other days where he just didn't feel it. And, I don't know whether he just didn't get enough sleep or whatever it was, but he'd get up and you'd hear him kind of rustle around down in the bathroom, and then he'd just disappear back to his bedroom, and then he just never made it to work that day. I've got to say that his boss was definitely a blessing. He continued to give our son chances after chance, and our son would shine quite a few, and then just when he would struggle, then that was when he would end up missing a day or whatever. And it wasn't like weeks at a time, but he'd miss a day here and there. And so leading up to this day, there was nothing unusual. A little bit about our son. I don't know. He was, I don't know how to describe him. He was a character, that's for sure. He was a jokester. He could definitely make everybody laugh. He loved to have people laugh, but he was also one of those that he was kind of a homebody. He didn't like to really get out and go do a lot of things. He had some good friends that he liked hanging out with, and that's what he liked doing. Didn't really like to, be in the public. Wasn't really looking for that kind of spotlight, I guess you could say. He wasn't into sports. He tried sports when he was younger and just never really set with him. He really liked skateboarding. But, which was kind of weird for me. I was, growing up, I was into all the sports, and I wasn't going to be one of those dads that tried to make sure that our son was doing what I did when I was younger. In fact, just the fact that he liked skateboarding was completely different than me. I didn't like skateboarding. Maybe it was because I wasn't very good at it. Maybe that's why I didn't like it. But when I was growing up, I was more the BMXer, freestyle kind of person. And it wasn't until we got out of junior high going into high school that, the BMX freestylers and the skateboarders started hanging out with each other. For some reason in junior high, it was like we were rival gangs or something. I don't know what it was, but so just the irony of having my son be a skateboarder it made me giggle every once in a while. But, um, he after he grew up, he wasn't much of a school person, did not like school at all. A lot of the kids would bully him or whatever, or teachers didn't really like him because, he had that typical skater thing. So, of course, most teachers or people like that kind of see you as a problem child. So he was already kind of labeled as that. He wasn't one that would cause trouble or anything like that. Just sometimes didn't want to do his work, and he just did not like school at all. So he ended up dropping out, and he did end up going back later, and he did. I don't remember if he got his GED or if he actually graduated, but he did go back a few years later, and he did finish, even though it wasn't anything that necessarily he needed to do a job or anything like that. But he just felt like at that point in his life he wanted to go back and complete it. And I don't know if that was maybe something for him that would make him feel like he accomplished something. We never really talked about that. I could imagine maybe that's what it was, just some of the stuff that he dealt with. Getting into the drugs, things like that, when you have something like that you can accomplish, then you can feel like you've done something. So, like I said, we never really talked about that, but, we let him know how proud we were that he did do that on his own. We never drove him to do it or anything like that. He actually did all that on his own. So, it's just, the drugs were something that he really struggled with, and I don't know if he has kind of that personality that I do. I've got a very addictive personality, so it's really easy once you get into something to just dive into it, and especially something like that, it's really hard to get back out of it when it's continually always around. And it wasn't around us. We didn't do that type. We had alcohol around the house, but that wasn't the things that he was struggling with. It was just the people he was hanging out with. He knew where to get it, how to get it, and when you know that, it's really hard to get separated from that. So, which again is why we're down in Texas now, because we knew, that's another story, but we knew that to find some healing, I think we needed to get away from everything as well. So, again, like I said, our son was when he was himself, he was very fun-loving and, jokester, all that, everything. Everybody, all parents loved him. Every time he'd go over to his friend's house, and we would always hear, how kind and how, respectful our son was, and we'd always kind of look at each other and, joke. I don't know whose kid they have over there, but, but no, he was good. So, after that, we went through some issues, of course, with him doing drugs. I ended up kicking him out of the house at one point, and he came back a while later, and I'll maybe share that story some other time. Briefly, just he died again. He died officially a couple of times from ODs, and they were able to bring him back. And this last time, I will share this, that he said that he went to hell and God brought him back. And that scared him. And he called me and asked me if he could come home. And he came home, and, you know, our background, he ended up giving his life back over to Christ. And of course, you know, that's just because you give your life to Christ doesn't mean that miraculously everything's going to change. You know, you still have things going on in life, and he still had some struggles. So I guess this just kind of brings us back in here. So he's living at the house, and August 8th, 2019, same thing, just kind of that normal thing. I heard him. I got up early. I don't remember if I was coaching or what that day, and I came home and was laying on the couch just trying to get some rest again before I had to go to work. And I heard him get up, so I didn't think anything of it. I heard him in the bathroom, and then I heard him just go back downstairs, and then that was it. So like I said, never thought anything about it because that was kind of normal. Every once in a while, that's what he would do, just go back, say, nope, he'd get a hold of his friend that was going to give him a ride and say, no, I'm not going to work today. So I go about my day, and here I am. I'm over at, it was Family Dollar, I do believe, and I had to work on a reach-in freezer. And they had a drain heater in the front that was shorted out, and here I am. I'm trying to get that fixed. I've got it all unwired. And then I get a phone call, and it's my wife, and you know, that wasn't anything abnormal either during the day. But when she called, I couldn't hardly understand what it was that she was even saying. And all I could really get was, Dylan's dead. And it was like time just started standing still. The weird thing was the first thing that I thought was, first I got to get home. But the second thing that I thought was, I've got to put this freezer back together, because if I don't put it back together, somebody's going to get electrocuted and they're going to die. So I'm trying to put this freezer back together with tears rolling down my eyes. I'm having a hard time seeing what I'm doing because it's just welling up inside my eyes. And I got it put back together, and I kind of composed myself long enough to just let the store manager know, hey, I've got to go to another emergency real quick, and I will be back when I'm able to get back. And I got in my truck and I started heading home, and I still was running through those words in my head all the way home. And that was when the thoughts started coming in the back of my mind was, why didn't I check on him this morning? Why didn't I get down there? Why didn't I? And like I've shared in some other ones, you know, that was one of those where immediately I had to grab a hold of those thoughts and go, no, I cannot do that right now. I need to get home. I need to get to where I'm needed right now. And I remember pulling into the neighborhood, coming down, and I started coming around. Ours was kind of on this little curve. And as I was coming around, there's ambulances there. I think there was a fire truck there. I don't remember if there was police there already. It was as it is if you're watching those movies and they come home and everybody is there. And so I'm trying to walk into my own house as there's paramedics, there's police or whatever, and firemen there. And I get in and I find my wife, and this whole time I don't feel like I'm actually in my own body while I'm doing this. It was almost like I was kind of watching myself. There was just this emptiness inside, this surreal feeling like this absolutely cannot be happening. This isn't my life right now. There is no way that this is what's happening. And I remember walking in the door, and the first thing that I'm thinking is, I've got to hold it together. I've got to hold it together for my wife. I've got to find out what's going on. I've got to see what I can do. And here comes that. I've got to fix things that I naturally have. And there was nothing that I could fix. Absolutely nothing. I still don't remember who was all at the house. I don't remember calling my mom or my dad or my brother. I don't even know what I would have said to them. I have no idea. I do not remember that. I remember our youngest daughter being upstairs in our bedroom. They were keeping her up there so that she wasn't among all the commotion. You figure that was 7 years ago, and she's 13 now, so she would have been 6. So she was up in our room, and I remember our pastor was there and his wife, and I think she was up there with her in the room, if I remember right. I like I said, there's some things I just don't absolutely remember. Then I remember our oldest daughter, she got to the house and she ran in there and she just broke through everybody and ran downstairs and got to him, and then she came back upstairs, and then again, that was what I was thinking was, I've got to be strong for my family. I've got to hold it together. And after that, I kind of remember, just holding her and holding my wife and trying to figure out what was going on. I'm like, this cannot be my house. This cannot be what is going on right now. And right about then is when they brought him upstairs, and it was just a body bag. I never looked in it. I don't know that I wanted to look in it. And I just remember them taking him out, and he was gone. Everybody was coming over to the house, and still just that empty feeling. I've had empty feelings before. My wife and I were going through a divorce, and I remember having some empty feelings then, but it was nothing compared to this. Again, like I said, it truly felt like I was just kind of floating in some type of alternate universe, and it was not the one that I was supposed to be living in. There was no thoughts going through my head, which is really weird. You would think that there's just thoughts rushing in and out in a time like that, and it was just, I was in such shock that I couldn't get any feelings except for, I've got to hold it together. I've got to hold it together so that I can be there for my family. And I know how long it was. Everybody kind of started filtering out. And then it was just me and my wife and our youngest daughter sitting at the house. And I think she went upstairs. I don't know what our youngest daughter did. I don't know. I just remember kind of sitting there in total shock, still trying to figure out what just happened. What was this that just went through, that I just went through? What was this phone call that I got earlier? What was all these people at my house doing there? Why did they pull this body bag out of our son's bedroom? And I don't think I slept that night. I know I stayed downstairs. I did not go up to the bedroom. If I remember right, I probably watched some show that I think our son probably would have liked, and it was just something to try to keep my mind off of it. I don't remember which one it was. I don't know if it was a Daredevil show or what it was, but I just kept watching episode after episode because I didn't want my mind to start wandering. I didn't want it to start doing whatever it was going to do once I let it do what it was going to do. I didn't want to feel what I knew was coming. And I didn't want to break down like I knew that I probably needed to, and eventually that I was going to. I probably spent, I don't know how long I spent actually, to be honest. That whole time really was a big fog. After that day, I know we got everything kind of together. We tried to get the service all set up, all that. And our pastors helped us with that. And again, just the entire time, I had this numb feeling. I had this blankness. I cannot even fathom that this is my life right now. How could this happen to me? There's no way. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and this was all a dream. Everything that just went through was just some wicked, sick dream that I just had. And every day I woke up, I did not find out that was just a dream. That was the reality. That was the truth. That was the before. That was the start of the after. That was the start of us being in a group that nobody ever wants to be part of. And that was a term that we would talk about at, the grief classes, was that we're a member of a group that nobody wanted to be part of. But thank God we were there for each other. We were able to help support each other. But this right here, it was part that nobody ever really prepares you for. Nobody tells you that when you go through something like this, that these feelings are going to be there. There's going to be this emptiness. There's going to be this heaviness. There's going to be this utter, I'm just trauma is the only way that I can even say it. There's just a huge trauma and it stops everything. I mean, you talk about a fight or flight kind of thing. I wanted to run away. but I couldn't run away because I knew if I ran away, then I was running away from my family that I knew in my mind needed me to be strong for them, which all they needed was just me to be there with them and to hold them and to comfort them and us share this together, because this was not just me that went through this. This was, my wife, she lost a son. Our daughters, they lost a brother. And, it's weird because it took me a little while to grab a hold of that it wasn't just our loss. It wasn't just Becky and mine. We didn't just lose a child, but our daughters, they lost a brother. My brother and her sister, lost a nephew, and my parents and her parents, they lost a grandchild. And it started kind of clicking in my head the more that I kind of came out of this fog that we weren't the only ones that lost somebody. It was also an impact on other people. So, maybe your moment looks different. Maybe your before and after, or that day that everything changed, looks different. Maybe it was a divorce. Maybe it was you lost a spouse. Maybe it was you got diagnosed with something terminal, or maybe it was whatever it was. There's different events, but those feelings can be the same. That's emptiness. That's complete not knowing what to do. That I can't believe this is actually happening. There's no way that I'm doing this. Then I hope this episode will reach out to you and let you know that you're not alone, that you are not weird, you're not going crazy. And the fact that I have made it 7 years, and my wife and I, we have grown stronger and stronger through this time, and our oldest daughter has recovered and become stronger and stronger in her life. And these are testaments to not letting a situation destroy us. It was, and I tell ourselves, I tell myself, our son would not want us to sit there and dwell on him, to do the woe is me. Our son would want us to live. And I ask myself questions like that every once in a while. What would our son think about our life down here in Texas? What would he think about it? So, yes, we went through some traumatic stuff that day that it all happened. But there's been time, there's been healing, there's been progress, there's been a shift in mindset, and it's a continual thing. It is a continual thing that we have to do. We can't just not think about having to progress. It is something that every day we've got to do it. Every day changes everything. Every day there's something that is new that comes up, and we get to choose whether or not we're going to be a victor or a victim. And I do not want to choose to be a victim. And if I chose it that day, then that next day I want to be able to realize what I chose and change that and become the victor that day, so that I can live a legacy that is going to honor my son, that he would go, I'm proud of you, Dad. So, even though that day changed everything, and if I'm being honest, part of me still lives in then. But here I am. I'm still here. I'm still progressing. So whatever your day everything change looks like. You don't have to have it all figured out. I still don't have it all figured out. I'm still figuring things out. It's still a work in progress. And I just continue day by day. It's just like in the Bible, it says that God's mercies are new every day. That means every day I get up and I'm going to thank God because his mercies are new every single day to help me progress one more day at a time. And that's where strength starts. I want to thank you guys for listening to this episode. I hope this reaches those that needs to be reached. If you know somebody that's going through something, I would ask that you would just share this with them so that hopefully they can see that they're not alone. They're not the one. They're not going crazy. Other people have gone through something like this, and we're moving forward, and we're continuing to move forward. Thank you.